we need to have everyone's voice heard. And you have to respect everyone's voice. And that takes a lot of listening. And there's another good thing about leadership, listening.
If you've ever been to Philadelphia, okay, this is like the biggest name recognition law firm in the entire city of Philadelphia. You cannot escape Pond Lehocky anywhere in Philadelphia. They are everywhere. He sponsors the Philadelphia Eagles. He runs a firm in excess of $100 million in verdicts. It's probably the largest workers' comp law firm in Pennsylvania, arguably the largest injury law firm in the entire state of Pennsylvania, or especially the Philadelphia area. Just a huge success story in this market that is a trendsetter by every regard. His name is Sam Pond. Sam, thank you so much for taking the time on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Bill. If I had known you were going to give that introduction, I would have joined you months or years before. That's a hell of an introduction, but thank you.
You deserve it. You deserve it. If anyone's been to Philadelphia, you can't escape Sam Pond because he is everywhere, and he deserves to be, because he's built not just one of the most known law firms in Philadelphia, but also one of the most respected, just an ironclad reputation, someone we all can learn from. Almost 300 staff at his law firm. Super, super successful. So I'm going to try and probe into Sam's mind for everyone's benefit here across the United States, all the attorneys that we have here. My first question for you, Sam, is what is your number one leadership tip for everyone?
That's number one leadership tip. Probably humility.
Can you elaborate?
Well, I think you have to be respected. You have to lead the charge, but you also have to be one of the team. You have to be able to say that you're really no better than anyone else as a leader. Leadership has a lot of components. That's why it's very difficult to answer that question with just one characteristic. You can talk about courage. You can talk about inspiration. You can talk about aspiration. You can talk about belief. You can talk about mindset. You can talk about coaching. I think leadership has a lot to do with coaching, but also just feeling like you're not better than anyone else. I think, you really are there to serve the team. You're there to serve the firm. You're there to serve the clients. You're there to serve the organization. I think some people get lost about leadership in regard to whether it's self-serving or whether or not you're really there to serve the greater good of the team or the organization. So there's a lot that goes into that. I love to have people have a mindset, and that's more about coaching. Waking up in the morning and not looking at it in a half full way, but a half empty way, but a half full way. In fact, a full way, to say that, I've got all this on my plate, and thank God I'm able to get out of bed and get at it. Endure. Stay in the moment, appreciate the moment, appreciate the experience. So there's a lot to do in regard to leadership. There's a lot to say, making people believe in your mission, believe in your core values, believe in what you're doing. Before this interview, I had 2 clients. I have clients this afternoon. I go to our small little neighborhood office once a week. That's where it all starts. That's where it all ends in regard to being there for the client and leading it. But, when you're into this kind of organization, you have to get into understanding, the bottom line is the bottom line. And unless we're able to generate fees, we're not able to help anybody. So there's a whole host of things that go into this. But if you look at, I always go back to, and I just got my good friend Shane Inspector just delivered 2 books to me this morning about Churchill. And when you really look at some leaders, what does Churchill stand for? Well, Churchill stands for a lot of things. He stands for having his voice heard when the rest of the crowd is saying something else. That's courage. That's personal courage. That's courage politically. That's courage socially. But you also look at not only generals and military history of the great ones, but you also have to look at some sports teams. Why is Nick Saban and Belichick always winning? Well, they're very demanding. They're demanding about excellence. They don't allow mediocrity and complacency to seep into the organization. And that takes the challenge of getting up and doing it every day. I'm reading a really good book by Rick Atkinson. It's going to be a trilogy on the Revolutionary War, and I read some pages last night. You know, Washington was not the best general at all times. And if you look about the New York campaign, he allowed some of his subordinates to do things that he should have known better, and it was his responsibility. The buck stops with the leader. This firm has stumbled time and time again, but being humble and having humility, you recognize that you make mistakes, and you have to admit to your mistakes, and you have to grow from them, and you have to allow others to do the same.
Man, I love that. And we've had Shane Inspector on this show, and that was super inspiring because I asked him about, his decision to go in on, what's seemingly the most unscalable piece of PI, which is the catastrophic stuff that has the longest, trial length and stuff like that. So another question that I have for you is, what is your take on positioning in a law firm, right? There's specialists in Philadelphia, there's the guy who specializes in the limited tort cases. There's the big brand advertiser types. There's you've positioned yourself in workers' comp. And then there's the Shane Inspectors who do catastrophic PI. When you think about like that nuance of having a position in a mass market, what comes to mind when I bring up the word positioning?
Well, I think it's important. I think it's about having your expertise. Workers' comp is the second largest body of law, or common law, case law, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, second only to criminal law. And I have my law school class tonight at Temple, and that class could run 5 days a week for 12 weeks, and we probably won't be able to cover everything. And without knowing all of the particulars in every individual case and knowing stare decisis and the precedents, you're not going to be able to represent your client. You talk about limited tort, and I'm sure you're referring to Mark Simon.
Yep.
People have carved out spaces, and you really need to do that. You don't go to see an orthopedic surgeon for a vascular problem. You go to see a vascular specialist. And the same thing with the law. You really need to have someone that knows all of the particulars about that body of law, from the case law to the statute, to the judges, to cross-examination, to direct examination, to the experts. You need to have that level of specialty in order to be effective for your client. Also, what we see and I see is the lack of strategy from my opponents in cases that come from other lawyers. Please, if you're going to represent someone, just like if you were going to run a team, and your previous guest talked about strategy, this firm has a strategy and a plan. And if you don't, you're basically sailing without a rudder and a compass. But in regard to representing our clients, the first thing that I do is I have a client meeting note. The next thing I do is I have a plan, a case strategy note. Where are we going? And that's going to be a moving target, obviously, as we go through the litigation. But you have to have a plan to get your client the best possible result. So you're only able to do that, to answer your question, Bill, if you have a real working, excellent level of knowledge of that area of law.
Yeah. And I noticed so many law firms who don't reach the level that you've reached try to be everything to everyone, and not really ever claim that one specialty, even if it's a nuanced niche within PI, like workers' comp or like catastrophic PI, or even the limited tort stuff. I noticed that lack of decisiveness because there's a fear of missing out. Like, what if I market myself as a workers' comp firm? Am I ever going to get PI cases? Of course you will. If you become the #1 most known firm in your market for workers' comp, you're going to attract PI cases as well. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. And that's a really excellent point. And I think people ought to be aware of that. And also that's if you're going to generate referral cases, you're going to be able to get a referral fee, assuming you have an honest relationship, and hopefully all professionals are at a certain level of ethics and veracity. But yeah, of course, that's the other benefit. That's a byproduct of it. And you're also serving your client. You're allowing your client. So if someone came to me in the previous example, if I was a cardiologist and I had a cardiac condition, but they also have a vascular condition. I don't need to do the vascular issue. I need to send it to a vascular specialist. And you have that whole network that gets developed and it builds trust. And the bottom line is the client is getting the results at a very high level of care and the highest level of standard professionalism.
So another question I have is how you look at meetings. I saw a prior meeting or interview with you where you talked about all the different meetings that you run in your firm, leadership meetings, retreats. And I believe you're talking about all the different ways that you kind of meet with department heads to delegate initiatives to people who work beneath you. So what is your take on meetings? Are they a waste of time, or is every lawyer too busy to have meetings with their team?
Well, it's a great question, because since the new year, we have gotten a CEO, and that's Pond Lehocky is now our CEO. I'm more into just trying my cases, but I'm also still the managing partner. So everything starts and stops with my view. I think meetings can be wasteful. I think you have to be very targeted, very focused in regard to your meetings. You have to make them productive. You have to go in with an agenda. You have to be prepared to go into a meeting, and you have to get out of that meeting what you intended to get out of it. And to bring in a lot of people into a meeting and just people sitting there listening to my jokes is not the best possible use of time. And I continue to learn in regard to making sure that we're getting the best out of our time in meetings.
Yeah, and I think you said something really important there, the importance of having a preset agenda and getting the predetermined outcome out of the meeting, and not just having it be a ramble fest where the CEO is venting and everyone's nodding their heads because you're the one signing the checks, right?
Well, I think that's a really good idea about nodding their heads. I think if you're going to have effective meetings, you have to, I think it's very reflective of the current state of affairs that we have in our society, in our country. We need to have everyone's voice heard. And you have to respect everyone's voice. And that takes a lot of listening. And there's another good thing about leadership, listening. And having an open mind to all different ideas. You really need to have a listening ear, and you need to have dissent, and you need to have dialogue. You cannot have people go with the consensus and understand that they're going and running this ship into the shoals. We need to be able to have a really open dialogue about what's best for the firm and what's best for our clients.
I appreciate that. Talk to me about your value of systems that you put into the business. Having almost 300 team members at your firm, what is the importance of having tried and true systems that you set high standards around, and especially addressing people when the systems are not followed? What are your beliefs and practices around running a systems-driven firm in addition to the culture that you've created?
Well, clearly the systems and having some uniformity in regard to standard operating procedures is extremely important. And without it, you're going to have anarchy and chaos. It's very difficult to run any organization without systems in place. We continue to evolve. We continue to get an open mind about systems and how we can make sure that our systems are the best. We need more work constantly here. We're very open to change. That's one of the other parts of being a leader is, I'm a little bit up in years, but I understand that you either change or die. So we have been very much on the cutting edge, I think, in regard to our space with technology. We were one of the first firms to adopt Litify, and Litify is a Salesforce system that we know integrates everything. We have integration from client services to finance to marketing to payroll, and without that integration and without those type of systems, it's such a waste of time. So we're looking for efficiencies, we're looking for productivity, and the more that we can integrate systems and AI and whatever else is out there and bots, etc., it's just going to make us leaner and more profitable.